Prisoners are supposed to stay put, but these men managed to find a way out. Here are the top 10 epic prison escapes. Number 10. Frank Abagnale. The most famous con man of the 20th century, Frank Abagnale was sentenced to prison for fraud, but he used his knowledge of fraud to con his way out of prison. When the marshal that was escorting Abagnale to the prison forgot the prisoner's papers, Abagnale, always the opportunist, seized on the marshal's irresponsible blunder. He convinced the marshal that he was not a prisoner, but was instead an undercover prison inspector. The marshal bought his story hook, line, and sinker. From there, Abagnale commissioned the help of a friend on the outside to create 2 fake business cards, one for an FBI agent and one for a prison inspector. The cards were smuggled in and slipped to Abagnale. Abagnale then gave the FBI card to a guard and said that he needed to call his FBI agent. The guard dialed the number on the card and his friend picked up. His friend told the guard that Abagnale was needed outside right away. The guard opened the gate and Abagnale walked out. Number 9. John Dillinger. John Dillinger, an infamous bank robber during the Depression era, successfully robbed 24 banks before he was put in prison. However, he went on to escape from not 1 but 2 prisons. Dillinger escaped from the first prison in 1933, when his friends busted him out by impersonating Indiana State prison officers. He was recaptured in 1934, though, and sent to Crown Point Jail. Crown Point Jail was supposed to be an escape-proof prison, but Dillinger would prove otherwise. Using a shelf from his prison cell and a razor, he carved himself a fake gun. Then he smothered the fake gun in shoe polish and used it to take 17 men hostage. He locked the guards in his cell and hightailed it out of the prison. His freedom was short-lived, though. Dillinger was killed in Chicago on July 22, 1934. Number 8. Ted Bundy. Notorious serial killer Ted Bundy had luck on his side when he escaped from the Garfield County Jail in Colorado on December 30, 1977. He was placed in a cell that had a loose, unwelded light fixture. He used this to his advantage by carving out a larger hole above it. He then spent months starving himself so that he could fit right through the hole. He chose to escape during Christmas because he knew that most of the guards would be away. He tucked law books under his blankets to deceive the guards into thinking he was there. Then he squeezed himself through the hole he had carved and crawled through the ducting. He landed in the chief jailer's apartment, who was home for the holidays. Bundy stole his clothes and walked out of the prison. He was arrested, though, on February 15, 1978. Before we move on, be sure to subscribe to Daily Top 10s with notifications on. Number 7. Houdini Hines. Alfred Hines has been nicknamed Houdini Hines, and rightfully so. The man managed to escape from prison 3 times. His most notable escape was from Nottingham Prison in 1958, when he concocted an elaborate, intelligent, and creative plan for escape. Hines had been recaptured and rearrested. This gave him the opportunity to file a lawsuit against his arresting officers. The lawsuit meant that Hines would be given a trip to the courthouse. Once there, he attached screw eyes to a toilet in the cubicle. He forced the guards into the cubicle and locked them up with a padlock. It was a fairly ingenious escape, which is fitting since Hines eventually became a member of Mensa. Number 6. The Texas 7. The Texas 7 were 7 inmates of the John B. Connolly unit that made a daring escape on December 3, 2000. It was a complicated escape, and they had to work together to pull it off. First, they overtook 16 people, including several supervisors, officers, and 3 unsuspecting inmates. From there, the Texas 7 stole their ID, credit cards, and clothing. They used these personal effects to impersonate civilians, allowing them to move through the prison. Then they split up. 4 of them went to the phones and called the prison tower. The phone calls distracted the guards working in the tower. The other 3 went into the tower and raided the guards. They stole the guards' guns and used the guns to steal a prison pickup truck. All 7 of them hopped in the truck and drove away. Number 5. Yoshi Shiratori. Yoshi Shiratori can quite literally be called the master of prison escapes. He managed to escape from prison 4 times in just 3 years. And although he used a number of different tactics to escape from various prisons, his most notable escape was from the Abashiri prison in 1944. Shiratori used miso soup to rust his handcuffs. No one could see that coming, and it allowed him a fairly effortless escape. When he was recaptured in 1946, though, he was sentenced to death. Authorities were tired of his escapes. The death sentence, though, only made Shiratori more desperate, and in 1947 he escaped yet again. When he was recaptured for the fourth time, authorities admitted defeat. They revoked his death sentence, and Shiratori remained in prison until his final escape, which was granted to him this time via parole in 1961. His escape antics are the premise of the novel and TV drama Hagoku. Number 4. The Maze Prison Escape. The Maze Prison was a high-security prison and was thought to be the most escape-proof prison in Europe. Concrete walls covered in barbed wire, steel doors at all prison exits, and 15-foot fences. Escape seemed an impossible endeavor. However, on September 25, 1983, not one but 38 men escaped from the Maze Prison. At 2:30 p.m., prisoners used smuggled guns to take prison officers hostage. From there, they hijacked a food delivery lorry. Then they forced the guards to open the gates. Needless to say, it was chaos. It took until 4:18 p.m. to resecure the prison. But by that time, the 38 men had escaped, making the Maze Prison Escape the biggest prison escape in British history. Number 3. Michel Vajour. Michel Vajour escaped from the La Santé prison on May 27, 1986, but the way he escaped is very bizarre. Unlike other prison escapees who develop elaborate plans or spend years digging tunnels, Vajour's escape was very creative. Vajour's wife, Nadine Vajour, spent months obtaining a helicopter pilot's license. On the day of his escape, she rented a helicopter and flew it over the roof of the prison. Vajour made his way up the roof by brandishing nectarines that he had painted to look like grenades. Once he was on the roof, his wife dropped him a rope and he climbed up. They flew away from the prison and landed in a nearby soccer field. From there, they simply ran away. Number 2. The Alcatraz Escape. Alcatraz, the inescapable fortress of a prison. Highly fortified and isolated, Alcatraz's island location seemed the perfect place for a prison. How could anyone escape? How could anyone cross the water? However, in June 1962, 3 prisoners did just that. Or did they? Frank Morris and John and Clarence Anglin executed one of the most famous prison escapes in history. It was so famous, in fact, that it gave way to the 1979 movie Escape from Alcatraz. The men spent 2 years digging a hole through the prison walls. They put dummies in their beds to fool the guards. They crawled through the hole they had dug and out onto the shoreline. But what about the water? They crafted a makeshift raft out of raincoats and contact cement. Their plan was so well executed that no one even knew they were gone until the next morning. But were they really successful? The FBI doesn't think so. The next morning, pieces of their clothing and parts of their raft were found washed up on shore. This led authorities to believe that the men had drowned. But no bodies were ever found, so some people believe that the verdict's still out on that one. Number 1. El Chapo. Joaquin Guzman Loera, or El Chapo's prison escape, is inarguably the most epic prison escape in history. He had already escaped his first prison in 2001 by bribing officials. This was embarrassing to the authorities. So when El Chapo was recaptured, authorities promised that he would never escape again. They locked him up in a maximum security prison, the Federal Social Readaptation Center. But on July 11, 2015, El Chapo escaped by way of an elaborate mile-long tunnel that had been dug for him 30 feet under the ground. El Chapo escaped from his cell by crawling through a 2-by-2-foot hole under his shower. The hole led to the tunnel. The tunnel led to a construction site, and the construction site led to his freedom. El Chapo's escape tunnel has attracted media attention from all over the world, and rightfully so. The tunnel was massive. It had ventilation, lighting, and a specialized motorcycle track. In fact, the tunnel was so big that 9.8 million cubic feet of soil was unearthed to build El Chapo's escape route. The sheer magnitude of this escape has earned El Chapo and his tunnel the top spot on our list of top 10 epic prison escapes.